my problem. It's not my problem. When I'm feeling metal, and I'm pissed and I'm beat. When I lie and I'm missing all of the time, but I'm never sure why I need you. Please let me shout.
All right. Welcome to the Prospect Podcast. We have a great guest today, Kevin Deshazo. We're going to talk about leadership today, getting better every single day, and we're gonna dive deep into that. He's written a book on it, and we're going to dive into all those kind of topics. There's a pretty big following on Twitter. It looks like it is going out to Twitter, so I guess maybe we're all good now. I don't see any errors, so that's good. I have, as always, to my left, I have Coach DePascal, and we're excited to talk and dive right into it. If you can, Kevin, just kind of go into your background, how you got into all this and built up your following and wrote your book.
Yeah, so I've kind of throughout my life always found myself in leadership positions, whether those were deserved or earned or not. Just always found myself in those positions, and I've always been fascinated by leadership, by performance, by how do you get a group of people moving in the same direction when things are easy, when things are not easy. And so about, 12, 13 or so years ago, I was leaving the corporate space, and I started to do social media training for college athletes. So I traveled around the country talking with college athletes, and this is before, obviously, NIL. And at the time, they were all getting, every conversation around social media was negative, right? Coaches were banning their players. Every headline was negative. And so I thought, man, if these guys could use it well, it's going to work out better for the school, because these guys are frontline brand ambassadors, but also set these kids up for success as they move into an increasingly digital world and whatever profession they're going to be in. So I traveled around the country to hundreds of college campuses talking to student athletes, and then got to have conversations with coaches and athletic directors about the things that I really cared about, which was leadership and performance and culture. Because I didn't want to be 45, 50 talking to college kids about Instagram, and they didn't want me to be that either. And so started to have these conversations and realized that most people treat professional development as bringing a motivational speaker, and I do some of that. I try to do that in a different way, and it's mostly just entertainment, right? I call it a church camp high. It's like these speakers come in like, that was amazing, and then 2 weeks later everything's the exact same, because it was just all 30,000 foot rah, be positive, be disciplined, be whatever, but there's no kind of ground level, here's how you actually put this into practice and change your leadership, change your team, change your life. And so I just started a daily email to just challenge and serve leaders and give them kind of a thought for the day. And then that grew into, will you come do staff retreats? Will you come speak to our teams? Will you come consult with our programs? And so over the last several years, we've worked with thousands of leaders, teams from high school to pro, on leadership, on culture, on performance.
And talk about how you got into actually. So you started working with athletes. What was the impetus to do that? Is that your background in sports and all that?
No, I played sports growing up. Was always a sports fan. It's interesting because I wanted to, always wanted to work in sports. The story that I always tell, like when I was in college, is around the time that Mark Cuban bought the Mavericks, and he's putting like PlayStations in the players' lockers. Like, just was a different type of owner. I'm like, that would be awesome. And so I probably emailed Mark Cuban 100 times and never got a response. Always wanted to work for a pro sports team. I grew up Jordan fan, wanted to work for the Bulls, whatever, and now I get to work with every sports team. And so it's was a sports fan, obsessed with leadership and culture. And I didn't know, when I started in this space, I didn't know anybody in college sports. I had zero connections. I just used social media to share my thoughts, to connect with ADs, to connect with coaches, to connect with athletes, and thought that we had something that was unique in the way that we think about athlete performance, team performance. And so the more I would talk about it, the more it resonated with the message that we hear most consistently is that nobody's talking about leadership the way you talk about leadership. Because it's, most people, and I don't know if that's fully true If you follow 50 leadership people, we're all probably saying fairly similar things, just in our own unique way, our own voice, our own perspective. But we think a lot of it is really deeply tied into personality, how a player is wired, how a coach is wired. We would just call that leadership intelligence. Like, you can't lead people intelligently if you don't know who they are. You can't lead yourself intelligently if you don't know who you are. I kind of liken it to, if you're a gardener and you've got this plant over here that needs full sunlight and watered every day, and this plant over here needs full shade and watered once a month, but you don't know that about them, and so you treat them both the same. One of those plants will grow, one of those plants will die, and it wasn't the plant's fault. You were just a bad gardener. You were just an unintelligent gardener. You didn't have the information you needed to help each of those plants grow. And so we try to help leaders become more intelligent about themselves and about those that they're leading.
And what specific things do you like to like kind of analyze where they are from that standpoint? Like, what's in their, kind of toolbox and
Yep.
where they come from. How do you go and do that to gain a knowledge base?
Yeah, we have a lot of things. One of the kind of our foundational tools, my business partner helped create, it's called the 5 Voices. And so it's both a personality assessment and a communication system. And so a great example of this, so there's a voice, a personality within our system called the nurturer. And the nurturer, they are unbelievable team players. They care deeply about people. They care about excellence. They care about winning, but they're not going to use people to get there. So they're great teammates. They love to celebrate people. Well, the best example of that is Michael Orr. So in The Blind Side, right? You've got the coach treating him like what we would call a guardian or a pioneer. It's like, go kill him, attack him. Well, that doesn't resonate with the way that his brain is structured. So Sandra Bullock comes out, she's like, hey, your job is to keep him on his, points at the quarterback, your job is to keep him on his feet. Your job is to protect him. Well, that is a nurturer's language, is to protect people and fight for people. Not to attack people, but to fight for people. And so he had the same ability, but when you give the right message to the right person at the right time, it unlocks their potential, and then you get the performance that you want. And so that coach was speaking a language that the kid didn't understand. And so what we tend to do with people is, if they don't understand, like, well, we just need somebody else. Right, we need somebody who understands it. Well, no, he can understand just fine. It's not an intelligence thing for that kid. It's an intelligence thing for the coach to say, wait a minute, how do I need to communicate this message to this kid? So I'll give you another example. We were working with a team a couple years ago, and most of their defensive line were all nurturers, which is a fascinating thing to think about, because that position is football is a violent sport, but that position is a violent attacking position. And so the way they had to frame the messages to those groups, it wasn't like coming at them, being super hard. It's like, no, that doesn't mean they're soft. That doesn't mean they're needy. Doesn't mean they're weak. Again, it's just the way you change the messaging to them to help them understand, how do you be a great teammate? Your role is to perform at this level for the good of the team. So it's not just about going and attacking, killing the quarterback. It's playing your role at the highest possible level to serve the highest possible good of the team. And several of those kids are now in the NFL because the coaches understood how to communicate with them.
What are some of the traits that you think are necessary, and what are some of the things that you think have zero to do with any like innate traits, but can be cultured and cultivated?
Well, that's a good question. In terms of like what makes a great leader?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think if I'm trying to decide, do I want to follow this person? Because I think that's the question, right? It's like it's maybe they're quote unquote successful, but do I actually want to follow them? And because I think we hear this phrase a lot, well, they don't have to like me, they just have to respect me. It's like, I can respect your competency, but I also need to trust you as a person. Again, that doesn't mean we have to be best friends. Doesn't mean it's kumbaya, let's like hold hands and do trust falls, but it's like I need to trust your integrity and character. So if I'm looking to say, like, do I want to follow this person? I think number one, the thing I look for most is, do they lead themselves well? Are they consistent with the way they lead themselves? Are they up and down all over the place? Or are they consistent? Are they self-aware? They know what they're good at. They know what they struggle at. They're working to get better at those things. I think, do they have humility? And it's interesting. When I say humility, I actually use Nick Saban often, and I don't think people would describe him as a humble leader. But what I mean by that is Alabama was different every year, right? They had the standard, they had the process, But it was always like, yeah, we won, but what do we need to do to get better next year? Because next year is going to be different. So to have the humility to say, this process worked this year, what do we need to change? There's a humility with that, as opposed to a lot of coaches, a lot of leaders are stubborn. It's like, no, this is my way and it works. Well, that might have worked 15 years ago. Is it actually the right system today? So do you have the humility to say, there's a better way to do this? And I'm always interested in the best way, not just my way. So I think self-leadership and humility are two very necessary traits. And then I think the ability to communicate. You don't need to be some rah-rah motivational. I think people follow the messenger more than they follow the message. And so can you be a person that people want to be around, who leads themselves well, who are consistent and knows how to connect with and unlock people?
Do you think there's certain skill sets that that leaders have that they need to have innately in order to be able to then get to that spot? Or can guys who haven't, let's say that you got a kid that's been a player and he's never been a leader, right? Let's say he was kind of like more of a selfish player. But then all of a sudden he goes into business, and can they become a good leader? Can they become a person that can lead other people? Or is there, if they don't have certain skill sets, that they're going to be tough to put into a leadership role or be able to learn what it takes to be a leader?
Absolutely. So I think yes, or yes, but I think anybody can become a leader if they want to become a leader. And so again, that humility piece of, because there are a lot of selfish players who can become great leaders if they have the humility to say, you know what, I didn't do this right when I was a player. And because you get, everybody thinks they know what it means to be a leader until they're sitting in that chair and like, ooh, I had no idea, right? Because I
100%.
I get so frustrated with the culture of our world where like we just decide that every leader is terrible and selfish and all these things. I'm like, you have no clue what actually goes into being a leader. Like sit in that chair for a day.
Right.
Like, whew, okay, I might have a little more grace and patience. Because most leaders, are there terrible leaders? 1,000%. Are there selfish leaders, toxic leaders? Of course. But most leaders, they're just trying to figure out how do I make people better today? How can I get people moving in the right direction today? And every decision they make, people don't realize this, every decision that a leader makes impacts everybody on the team, in the organization. But everybody receives that personally. Right. Well, why did coach do this to me? Why did the boss do this to me? Well, nobody did anything to you. They made an organizational decision that impacts everyone. You're just viewing it through a selfish lens, and it might be inconvenient for you because every decision a leader makes is inconvenient for multiple people. Because no decision, even the right decisions are not convenient for everyone. And so I think to have people to step in those positions have to have the humility to say, okay, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. Can I be the same things we want of players, right? Are players coachable? Well, is a person coachable? If that person's coachable, then they can become a great leader. But if their ego gets in the way or if fear gets in the way, then they will never become a great leader because that's going to be what drives them every day. But I think anybody is capable of being a great leader, but they have to actually want that.
That's a great point.
I think part of the problem too is everybody's. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Derek. You're on a slight delay. Go ahead. Ask your question. I'll ask after. Go ahead. Go.
Oh no, I was gonna say sometimes like everybody, like you said, everybody thinks they know leadership until they're actually in that leadership. Look, just because you're a really good offensive coordinator doesn't mean that you're going to be a really good head coach, right? The impact that every decision you have is going to, affect some people in a positive way, some people in a negative way. Some people, they really don't care. So even you as the leader, you're kind of looking through it in a lens, worrying about, oh, this is going to affect this person or this is going to affect that person, when half the time, like, that person doesn't even give a shit what you said. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, we just look at it like that, where decision is so impactful. And on the other side of it, like, not everybody is feeling what you think they're feeling, but and there's another side to that where they do feel like that. Right. So I think it's really hard. Like we say it all the time that, the best coaches are in the stands on Friday nights, right? And, if you call a run, they're going to yell pass, right? Or if you call a pass, they're going to yell run. Like, like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about what it takes to be a leader and how hard that really is. But I think the key part to all of it is look, be a good leader and make what's the right decisions for the good of the group. Well, you're not going to be everybody's friend. That's for sure. You're going to have to make some really tough decisions, have some really, really hard conversations. And look, those are the leaders that you respect more because they're willing to tell you that hard truth rather than just kind of go with the flow. Am I right in that kind of outlook on things?
100%. I think, leadership today, the last 20 or so years, we've moved so leadership forever was, I'm the boss, I don't care what you think, do the job, like just get it done. And there's good and there's bad from that, right? People can perform at certain levels, but there's also people are getting used and abused and burnout. We've moved way over, we've swung the pendulum to the complete opposite side, like I need to be your friend. And I need to be your counselor and your therapist.
Right.
I need to make you happy. And it's like, no, like leaders, again, the problem with leadership is you are constantly disappointing people. And because nobody has the access to the information that you have, nobody has the burden of the decision that you have.
Yep.
And so to say, like, my thing is, for leaders, they don't have to agree with you, they have to trust you. I don't need you to agree with me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need you to, because you don't know what I'm going to try to communicate the decision the best I possibly can. But at the end of the day, it's okay if you don't agree with me. I get it. Because consensus is not going to happen. It's just an unrealistic expectation. And so to say, hey, I get it. You don't like the decision. I understand that this might be inconvenient for you. But do you trust me? Do you trust my character? Do you trust that I'm actually making decisions that I believe will benefit the whole team, which ultimately will benefit you, even if it's a short-term inconvenience? Do you trust my character? Do you trust my intent? And I'll give you a quick real story about that. I was working with a client one time, and this is on the business side, and a CEO had kind of bought out his other partners, and one of their senior level directors, I was meeting with them monthly. They're like, man, I was like, do we need to talk about some of the decisions that have been made? I said, I don't have all the insight, but do we need to just process that as a group? And one of them's like, I don't know if I trust him anymore. And I was like, well, that's a heavy thing to say about someone. Like, I don't trust them anymore. And I said, do you mean you don't trust him, or you don't agree with the decision?
Right.
Like, do you mean he's a bad person? Like, he doesn't have integrity? She's like, oh, I think he's unbelievable. He's a great man, great person. I was like, okay, so you just disagree. Great. Let's be clear, because that's a very different thing.
Right.
And I said, okay. I said, well, you disagree. That's fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with disagreeing. Healthy teams, healthy cultures disagree all the time. If you're always in agreement, you actually don't have a healthy culture. You have people operating out of fear. And I said, you disagree, and that's okay.
Right.
I said, but you have some influence. You've been here a long time, so you know him. You have relationships. I said, if I were you, I'd go ask him for some more information. Say, hey, I'm struggling with the decision. Can you walk me through what you're thinking? I said, he doesn't owe you anything. I said, he doesn't actually owe you any additional information. I said, but I know his character, you know his character. He'll probably give you some context, some information. And then you have to make a decision. It's like, okay, do I actually distrust him after knowing more? If you don't trust, then leave. By all means, leave, right? Don't work for people that you do not trust. That is an unhealthy situation. Get out immediately. I said, but if you do trust them, you have to say, okay, what's my level of disagreement? If I vehemently disagree, think this is the absolute wrong direction for the organization, then leave. Right? Because you can't execute the plan if you extremely disagree with it. I said, but if you trust them, but you just disagree, you would have done it differently, then you submit. You say, okay, they're the boss, and at some point, leaders are leaders for a reason. We have to defer and submit to their leadership, and then go execute the vision to the best of our ability. And so I think leaders have to be comfortable disappointing people and comfortable with people disagreeing with them, as long as they can put their head on their pillow at night saying, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not leading out of fear, insecurity, ego. As long as they trust my character, they don't have to agree with my decisions.
I think also there's a big assessment from leaders that they have to continue to assess their people. So they have to be able to assess who, and this is I think a really, really important skill in leadership. And as someone who's led a lot of different teams, not just athletic teams, but in business, I've run up against it many, many times. And I think it's important as you go through the process to figure out which groups are here for you long term, which groups are here for you short term, which groups of people um, you might need immediately, but you know that it's not going to be here at all much longer. And and then also know like, hey, this person is not right for our team, right? And then the other thing is self-assess. Like, what do you like? You have to listen to all the people that work for you and what they're doing and their suggestions, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them. But then also take the time to self-assess, right? I think that's what Nick Saban does a fantastic job of, or did well, probably still does in his life. But
Yep.
Self-assessing how he approaches everything, even though he has the process that he doesn't deviate from the overall process, but he self-assesses the things that are going well. And I think, and is true to what he feels he's comfortable with, which is why he walked away from leadership. Doesn't mean he won't come back at some point if he thinks he can figure it out. But in the present form at that time, with everything that was going on, he walked away and said, hey, I don't feel like I can lead in the way that I feel most comfortable leading.
Yep.
And I don't know that I can adapt to this process.
Or that I want to adapt.
Or I want to, right. Or
Yep.
that I want to.
Yep.
And I think that, right. So yeah, he probably thinks maybe I want to do something else, or maybe he's a real smart guy. Who knows? Maybe he's watching from the sideline for the last couple of years and saying, let me see how other guys that are good, that have worked for me, which he has a lot of those guys, and that have gone on to be head coaches, and how they handle it. And then I can go and figure out whether I do or I don't in the future. So I think that he does really good job, because you always see his outward projection of what he thinks others should do in their process as a part of being on his team, or how they should handle themselves. But I think what he really does a great job of is that self-assessment and figuring out which groups of guys are there. He's had plenty of coaches that are there for a short run, do a phenomenal job, and then they're on to something else. And he knows either they're going to leave or they're not there for long. Then other guys that were there for a very, very long time. And then he had guys like the guy who's the Indiana head coach, who he really kind of had pigeonholed right into one area, and that guy had to go figure out that he should go fly on his own, and that's what he wanted to do. But he was kind of pigeonholed into an area. He was very good at it, but he was pigeonholed into an area, right? So, because the leader saw him in a certain way, right? So, I think that's really an important thing that leaders have to be able to do, and it's a very difficult process. You make obviously mistakes along the way, and the other thing I think, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, I think it's important for leaders not to beat themselves up when they make mistakes. So because that begins to self-assess is important, but beat yourself up doesn't allow you to move forward. So I'm curious, where leaders, when they fail on something, what are recommendations that you have for them? Because some guys have a hard time bouncing back, and I noticed that obviously in sports you see it so apparently, because it's wins and losses, and these guys are overall probably fantastic leaders. They're just judged every week on whether they win or they lose. You know what I mean? So there's levels to it. But what do you try to help leaders with when they fail at something, and how to move forward?
I think the same thing they would say to their players, right? That you always say, it's the next play mentality. Forget the last play, play the next play. Now, it's coaches always say that, but it's also funny how rare coaches allow players to forget the last play and play the next play, because they keep yelling about the last play for the next 5 minutes. And players like, Coach, I'm trying. I'm trying to play the next play, but you keep talking about it. But I think it's the same thing for coaches, right? The way we view performance, and it's tough because, to your point, in our world, we're judged on wins and losses. And you can be a very good leader with a very good culture and not always have the wins and losses for a variety of reasons. Maybe you just don't have the talent and the resources that somebody else has. And you winning 4 games might actually be maximizing the potential of your team. Like you could coach your best season, and they may not be a 9-win team. They may be a 4-win team based on that's as good as you can. Now, I think great leaders are also their talent identifiers and their talent developers. So there's certain places have different resources, and there's a lot of factors that go into why coaches win and lose. But we always view performance as learning. So for athletes in a game, okay, you performed this way. What can we learn about your mindset? What can we learn about your preparation? What can we learn about your composure? And now what do we need to do to adapt and practice so that we can go perform better the next time? So it's this idea of like, you prepare, you perform, you reflect, you adapt, and then you start over. You prepare, you perform. And so it's the same thing for coaches, whether it's after a game. So we always tell coaches, after a game or after practice, what do? You go watch the game tape. Where were we in the right position? What went well? What can we build on? Where were we in the wrong position? What did we not do well? What needs to be corrected before the next time we perform? And so I tell coaches, like, watch your own game tape. How are you on the sidelines? How's your communication? How's your body language? Can you watch how you communicate to this kid who just made a mistake, and then watch his body language for the next 90 seconds? Did your communication set that kid up for success? Or did the way you communicate take that kid out for the next 10 minutes? Because now they're full of doubt, they're beating themselves up because you were angry with them. But I think we have to view performance as learning, both in game, but also the performance of leaders just as, to your point, decision making. You're going to hire the wrong people. You're going to recruit the wrong kids. You're going to your point, you may see an assistant coach in this role where they may have potential to be all sorts of different things. You're going to get it wrong. It's like, okay, well, the expectation is not that leaders are perfect. Now, I think the problem is most people think leaders are supposed to be perfect. It's like, no, you're not going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes all the time, just like your players, just like your staff. The question is afterwards, okay, why did I make that decision? What led me to that? What can I learn about that? Okay, next time I'm in that situation, what decision should I make? So to your point, the self-assessment, the self-reflection, the more leaders take time for reflection, the greater their self-awareness, which means the greater their leadership effectiveness. And so just understand, why did I do that? Was there a pattern, a tendency? Was it fear? Was it ego? Was it busyness? Was it lack of information? Okay, well, how am I going to be better the next time? Great, now I've learned. I don't need to keep dwelling on that mistake, because it's not, like in our own home, I've got 3 boys, 9, 14, 16. If you have a bad day, you screw up, you fail, whatever it is, we have a 24-hour rule. Great, you get 24 hours to whine about it, then get over it, because nobody cares. Like, it's over. You thinking about it isn't going to change it. It's already happened, so now let's figure out what are we going to do today. So same thing for coaches. Like, stop dwelling on what happened, learn from it, and then move forward.
I think, that's definitely an important thing, and that's as hard as players are on themselves. You're right. Coaches and are much harder on themselves. Now in the business world, it's less of an direct issue, as far as like, because there's not always a win or a loss that's like that stays with you in the same way. But that's an important thing, being able to move on, and I think dwelling and becomes more of a detriment to you. I'm curious about, like, so you familiar with the Peter Principle? So people go up to certain levels and then they get stuck, right? Or they get to a level and they fail at that level and they never get back to that level again for whatever reason. Maybe they don't want to, maybe they didn't like it, maybe they just don't feel they could do it, or maybe they don't get a chance. Well, who knows? Multiple different things. And then there's guys like Lane Kiffin, I use as a great example of this. Rose really quick, was like Mr. Boy Genius, failed flat on his face, was kind of outcasted, failed a couple of times, 3 times, I think, in my estimate, 3 times. So Raiders left Tennessee, didn't really fail, left Tennessee, which just kind of made it worse right after 1 year. Then you could argue, I mean, he probably had a winning record, but failed, according to big time football at USC. I'm sure he had a winning, but these guys get failed, they lose 4 games, So, in that capacity, and then went and worked for Nick Saban. They were not guys. They talk about it openly, that really saw eye to eye, but he respected and learned a ton of things from him, and then slowly resurged to where he's in a situation now where he's built the program, right? and who knows where he goes from here. But I use him as an example was because I feel like when I look at his career, he's a guy that looked like in the beginning, if you watch him, was trying to do what people thought should be the head coach and act like what he thought should be the head coach. And then when he kind of worked for Nick Saban, who is obviously drastically different than him, he realized that he had to be who he was as a head coach. Take the things that helped him. Like he said, Nick Saban helped him with structure. You know what I mean? He really kind of hates structure, but like Nick Saban helped him with it. How do you organize the program? How do you organize things so everything stays on time? And then applied his own personality to things. Because, you know, when you watch what I see people talk about him at Ole Miss, they say, like, you know, Lane Kiffin hates practice, meaning he's trying to do what he has to do, get everything done, and is not there all day long. Doesn't feel they need to, right? So, what are your thoughts with that? So I use that example because that's an example of a guy who kind of failed, had to go back down and research. He's an example of a guy who went back up and above and is achieved. There's a lot of people who get to their level of failure, the Peter principle, and then they never get above it. What are your thoughts on that? Can you hear? Yeah.
I can't.
I can't hear him for some reason.
Let's see.
Can you hear me now?
Should be able to.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Kevin.
Sorry, my microphone's been having issues, like dies halfway through or just disappears. No, I think it's a really good question and a really good example. And I think for me, it kind of goes back to the humility piece and the coachability piece. But I think it's this is true of any industry, but we'll stick with football. Being an offensive coordinator is very different than being a head coach, right? There's a difference between performing, meaning you have tasks to do, and leading performers. And that's what leadership is. Like it's same thing in sales, right? Like you have your best salesperson. You're like, oh, we're going to make them the sales manager. Well, they were really good at sales. They're terrible at leading people. And so now you've lost your best salesperson and gained your worst leader. And it's like, well, you got to train them to lead people, or you reward them differently and say, hey, do you want to actually lead people? Because you're really good at this, and we can redo your structure to where you can just keep selling and make more money selling, or we can put you in charge of developing and leading 10 salespeople. And they may say, you know what, I just want to keep selling. Now they may change their mind in a year because people, you know, we want different things and it's never final. But it's different between being a coordinator and a head coach. And every head coach realizes this pretty quickly. Like, oh, I thought I watched coach for a long time, but I actually had no idea what went into it. And so many get into that role and they fail because it's like anything else. You're going to fail. Now there's levels of failure, but you're going to fail because you've never done it. All right. If I go, I think about like if a kid's going to lift weights and they're just starting out and they're trying to lift 100 pounds and they can't do it. Okay, we'll start at 90 and do that for a couple weeks. And then you try 100 again. It's like, oh, I got it. Okay, well, you built up the strength and the ability to do that. Well, now try 125. Well, I'm not good enough for 125 yet. I failed. Okay, do 100 for a couple weeks and then try and you keep failing as you're growing. You're failing because you're trying things that your skill set isn't there yet. But you have the humility and the discipline and the work ethic to say, okay, I know I'm not good enough at that yet, but I want to figure it out. So some coaches realize that pretty quickly and say, okay, how do I get as much help around me as I can so that I can learn how to be a head coach, how to run an organization? Because it's different running, coaching 12 receivers or whatever many versus leading an SEC football team with, you could have 100 some people or 150, 170 people in the organization, right? Because you've got all the players and all the staff and all the analysts and all the GAs and all your recruiting staff and you're a CEO, right? You're no longer a ball coach. You're, especially in today's world, you're a CEO. And so I think some get in that position and they fail and they learn kind of on the go. They say, hey, I need help. Some people like Elaine, they get knocked down a peg or two. It's okay, I need to go learn under someone who does it really well. And your point is spot on to say, Lane, and so many coaches do this terribly, Lane Kiffin cannot be Nick Saban. They are very different people. So for him to try to mirror Nick Saban,
Right, not even close.
He's going to fail miserably and hate every bit of life, because it's not who he is. It's not how he's wired. And so you say, okay, what does Nick do well? How do I do that? As you said, how do I do what Nick did well in my way? How do I take his structure and put my personality and my perspective on it? Because I can't just mirror it, because we don't operate. We're not the same person. We don't operate the same way. Ren Baker is the athletic director at West Virginia. He tells a story. He was on Eddie Sutton's staff at Oklahoma State 20-some years ago as a GA, and then was coaching NAIA basketball at another school in Oklahoma, and was just really struggling. So he called up James Dickey, who had coached at Texas Tech and Houston, and he was on staff with Eddie Sutton. He said, Coach Dickey, like, I don't understand. Like, I watched Coach Sutton. Like, I'm trying to do what he did. Like, it's not working for me. And James Dickey goes, Ren, did you ever stop to think that maybe you're not Eddie Sutton? He was like,
right.
Oh. He goes, that was the most freeing advice I ever got. It's like, no, I need to lead like Ren Baker. I need to coach. I understand Coach Sutton's principles, but I got to do it my way. And too many coaches try to just copy and paste, and it doesn't work for a variety of reasons, whether it's personality. Even if you have similar personality, you're in different places, different situations, you're leading different people. And so I think some do that, and some get in that role, and they're a head coach. It doesn't go well, and they say, you know what? I think I'm just fine being a coordinator. I can do this the rest of my life, and that's okay. They don't want to learn. They did it. It's like, I don't love that role, because I think they're still a leader, but it's just a different level of leader. And we have to realize, like, being the leader is not what everybody wants, and it's not where everybody should be. Everyone's capable, but not everyone should be there. And to have that security, like to be so secure in yourself to say, nope, I'm going to be the best OC in the country, and I'll be thrilled with that, because I'm going to get paid well, I'm going to have a lot of fun, and I don't have the pressure and the stress of, I love coaching ball, I love developing kids. I get to do that as OC, DC, whatever it is. I don't get to do that as much as a head coach. I don't want to learn the skill set of that role.
No doubt about it.
Right, Kevin. And I also, it's part of, people always fit into a category too as a coach, like, oh, if we stay on the top, if we stay with football, right, like, oh, you're a high school coach, well, okay, that means that you also want to be a college coach, or you want to be an NFL coach, right? Like, some people don't have those aspirations to be that. Like, they understand, like, hey, I love coaching where I'm at. Or, hey, why didn't you go and take that bigger job, or that quote unquote on paper or in social media the better job, right? The bigger job. Like, that's not what some people want, right? Like, I like where I'm at. I know the role I am. I think Chip Kelly is like an excellent example, right? Like, kind of rose through the ranks, head coach at Oregon, then goes to the NFL, doesn't really work out, right? Like, and then takes a step back, doesn't, leaves being the head coach of UCLA to go be an OC, because why? He just wants to coach offensive football. And now you see him, okay, college again. Now he's back in the NFL. Like, he understands the role that he wanted, right? And a lot of people will kind of look at it like, oh, well, you failed this or you failed that. Well, isn't this all just a process of finding who you are individually and how you can maximize whatever it is that you've been put on this earth to do, right? So he understands,
100%.
like, I'm the guy that wants to be boots on the ground, right? Like, I want to be in that offensive meeting room, scheming up plays and calling plays on game day, where as a head coach, especially, look, you're talking about Oregon is one of the biggest programs in the country. And then, the Philadelphia Eagles, whose fan base isn't, like, they're not going to tolerate much nonsense or whatever. Like, I don't want to do this. I want my passion is be in the actual football world, not having to worry about all of the other fires that come across my desk on a daily basis. Like, no, how do we scheme up how to beat this team and this defense? I think that self-awareness is a trait that coaches or that people don't understand, that's such a pivotal part of being a really good coach, is the self-awareness, knowing who you are, what you are, and then ultimately finding those assistants that fill in those weaker to help support you and understand and will, run with your message. Because look, as an assistant coach, you are not going to agree with every decision that a head coach makes 100%. And like you said, to circle back, right? Like you don't have to. You're not supposed to. That's why you were hired. You were hired to not challenge in a negative way, but like I look at my role as an assistant coach of a high school football team. As the assistant, my role is to think of things or come up with things that you as the head coach maybe aren't seeing, or you're just the connection with the players is no fault of yours. But as an assistant, I have a different, there's different interactions with the players because of the level that I'm at or the title that goes along with where I'm at, right? I coach differently, right? Like that's what you hire. You hire differences to fill in those blanks so that you can hit on every one of those things. I think head coaches do a really good, like the ones that are good do a really good job of that. They are. And could go back to Lane Kiffin, right? Like they also nurture your assistants to ultimately be a head coach. So maybe you're going to sit in on this interview process with this GA, or, hey, you're going to help me with ordering uniforms or something on that level to just ultimately show you like, hey, this is kind of shit that I deal with. Like, hey, I just had a 45-minute conversation with the cheering coach because we got to figure out how this all works together, right? Like that. Really good leaders expose assistants and others to those types of things that not a lot of people have that head coaches deal with.
100%. Because you have to understand, to your point, number one, I think it's we talk about this idea of you're at your best when you're 100% committed and 100% content. Meaning, I'm 100% committed to figuring out how good I can possibly be, but I'm also content if this is where I am. Like I don't need to prove myself to anyone. Wins, losses, whatever. Like I'm content with who I am as a person. The wins and losses don't define me. And so for some coaches, it's they're that as an assistant. Their vision is not to be a head coach. It's how can I be the greatest I can possibly be in this role? That's the challenge, is how do I maximize my potential in this role? And I don't need to chase somebody else's version of success, because so many, you guys are in it. Coaches, the sports industry chases title maybe more than any other industry. And so you're going to go be a head coach at a place that's an absolute dumpster fire, top to bottom, and you've ruined your joy, your effectiveness, your ability to get other jobs. Like you've ruined your career because you just were so desperate to be a head coach that you went to where nobody can possibly win. And it's like, or you could have waited. It's okay to want to be a head coach, obviously, but like wait for a better. There's no perfect opportunity. Sometimes there is, but
there's no patience. Nobody has any patience either, because the social media world has pushed and put everything into fast forward, and we're constantly comparing to the least amount of percentage that we see, right? Like the most of the highest percentage we see is the least percentage of what actually happens in reality. And I think that's created such a false narrative for some of these. I mean, look, even like in the recruiting world with kids, like some of these guys like think they're they see all of this social media stuff of, hey, Alabama or all this. That's the the picture that's painted, when reality it's like, hey guys, when we do the numbers, like 3% of you are going to play college football.
That's right.
And that's out of how many thousands of high school, right? That's the reality. And that's that's part of it. It's the same with coaching. It's the same with leadership. I mean, it's really hard to look at, I've been coaching for 16 years, to look at it and find, maybe full of guys when you really look at and by definition on paper of what most people think a leader is, you have those guys. Like it's just the way of the world is not that anymore. I don't know if we nurture it or we just don't create leadership skills anymore in it, because everybody's afraid to say what you're not supposed to say or make somebody feel a certain type of way. And we've kind of been set in this forefront of like, okay, as long as everybody's okay and I'm friends with everybody, I'm leading. And that's really not the case. You have to have those really hard conversations.
Trying to be a people pleaser will only cost you your own peace. And trying to make everybody happy, because you can't make everybody happy. I think it was Saban's like, if you want to make everyone happy, go sell ice cream. Like I think the kindest thing you can do for someone is tell them the truth and hold them accountable. Now, how we do that matters, right? You got to be like, you don't be a jerk about it. Don't berate them. But if
Yep.
it's if so the three of us, if in our jobs, if we're making mistakes, and we're going to, because we're not perfect, all three of us would say, hey, if I'm making a mistake, I want to know about it. I want to know that I screwed something up because I don't want to be a burden on the people around me. So if I screw up, let me know. And either I can figure out how to fix it, or if you know the easy fix, then like guide me through that, walk me through the process. Awesome. And most people feel that way. If you talk to any kid, you're like, hey, if you're screwing up, or any staff member, assistant coach, whatever, hey, if you're screwing up, would you want me to let you know, or would you want me to just let you keep doing that, and you just keep making things more difficult for the team, and you're losing influence, and the team's like, I don't know, I want to know about it. Okay, well, that's called accountability. And so you are going to screw up because you're not perfect. I know you're going to screw up. I expect it, not because I have low expectations of you, but because I'm a human and you're a human. I know how we operate. And so when you do, I'm going to challenge you. Say, hey, here's the standard. You're operating down here. Not mad at you. I love you so much that I'm going to tell you the truth, and we're going to figure out a way to get better. And because the problem is we don't hold people accountable, and then eventually we fire them or we bench them or whatever. And like, well, what do you mean? Well, you keep doing this, and this. Well, why didn't you tell me that? Well, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I didn't want to. And it's like, if you know somebody's doing something wrong, again, that doesn't have to be some ethical thing. Like if you know they're living below the standard and you don't bring it up, their failure is your fault. Their failure is now your responsibility because you could have had a conversation. And then the other side of it is we have to be have such humility and security to be able to receive that accountability, because most people, you hold them accountable because they'll say like, no, I want to know I made a mistake. Well, then we hold them accountable. Well, why are you being such a jerk to me? Why are you being a bully? Why are you being toxic?
Yeah, and they get all salty. Yep.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, what you just
They take
told
it so
me
personal.
is you don't want to get better.
That happens in my estimation more often than not in today's world.
100%.
Oh yeah.
I could think of very few instances where guys handled it well, and usually what's happened is they do exactly what you're saying. They yell back at the leader and say this, and this, and there are two things that are really important. One, I think, and I'm curious your thoughts on this. One, I think, is that when you have a conversation with someone that works with you or coaches with you or plays for you, and they have a gripe and they air their gripe, and then you explain to them what the path is, or you explain what your thought process was, whether it was good or bad, right? This was my thought process. I'm not saying you agree with it, you may disagree with it, and they don't handle that well. If they can't take coaching, it's going to be a very difficult path for that person within the organization.
And in life.
And one of the other things,
it's just like players.
Yes. So one of the other things I think that leaders sometimes struggle with, like you talk about with that conversation, is they sugarcoat certain things. So you want to be kind in your conversation, but you don't want them to believe that if you think what they're talking about is wrong, you want to recognize how they feel and then say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. And if their feelings, because I've dealt with this, until I coached youth sports, because I was a high school coach for a long time. I wrote a book on leadership, and I coach high school programs. I've had a business for 20 plus years. I worked for other people at a very high level at a very young age. Played football, obviously. So I've seen a lot of different things. But what happens is when somebody gets feedback and they say, this is the number one thing. This is how I feel. Meaning, you told me your side, I told you my side, and then they say, but this is how I feel. I know that there's a problem going to be going forward because the feelings are driving the decision-making process, not actual possible facts, nor the ability to get better, right?
Yep.
So if I said something to you and you didn't like it, and you said, well, I don't like, I disagree with you. I said, well, this is how I'm thinking about it. And you said, well, this is how I feel.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter what your explanation is. I think that that's going to be a very hard process. I think it's a better process when they say, this is how I feel, but I understand where you're coming from. What do I need to do?
Yep.
That's a different conversation. And the reason why I players that played for me talk like that, or even assistants that I've coached talk like that. But when you coach youth kids, their parents are way more entrenched in feelings.
Yeah.
And I could tell you, I've had kids that are great kids that love a program, love it. They don't want to be on that. They want to be on the team. They still want to be on the team, but the parent feels a certain way so vehemently. And then what I learned from that is that, everything I learned all the way up to that point was kind of thrown out the window, because you're like, player wants to be here. And you deal with it now in high school a lot more.
Oh yeah.
I haven't dealt with it as much because I haven't coached high school in the last 5 years, and I listened to Derek because he's told me that this has become more of an issue in high school now, okay, than it was even back when I coached, which is only 5 years ago, 4 years ago. But I noticed it at the youth level, and so I explained to them. I say, hey, listen, your kid loves it, so. Well, it's hard for parents to get out of their feelings.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's very, very hard for them to get out of their feelings. And that at that point you get to this rub in the road. And I think, and we bring it up because Derek had told me he sees a little bit more in high school, if I'm not mistaken, right, Derek? And I think in a workplace you're seeing this a lot more. So than you ever have, where guys, young people are coming into the workplace. They have a mindset of what they think it should be, and then everything is about how they're feeling about that. And I see it in college football because it's easier to leave a school and go to another school because of the portal, right? So as soon as you feel a certain way, whether it's reality or not, it's just easier to move on because you feel that way. I'm curious if you have solutions for this, because I don't know if there are, but if you have solutions for this and ways that leaders can go about thinking and handling that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think parents ruin everything, right? As a parent with kids in youth sports,
Yep.
I sit and watch. Like I usually either sit, like I'm very extroverted, love being around people, but like at my kids' games, I just sit or stand, if they're in basketball or baseball, like away from people, because I just can't handle. Every parent thinks their kid is like world class, going to be D1. I'm like, and that the coach is the dumbest person in history. I'm like, no, there's a reason your kid doesn't play. They're not good. Like this coach is not a jerk. They're not a bully. They don't dislike your kid. They love your kid. Yeah.
But there are coaches. So coaches have. I want to interject on this because I am a coach.
Now there are terrible coaches. Sure.
There are. It's not that they're terrible. I won't say that they're terrible in their ability to coach a sport. Meaning, I think that these guys, do the best they can, whatever knowledge they have. In some cases, high school, they're not intentionally.
Yeah.
I think sometimes coaches also allow the noise to influence them as well. And I think that is where you do or sometimes I'm a parent on the side and, a kid goes and says, hey, I'd like to try this position. You immediately say no. Like the first thing you do is you let them try and show them that if you think they're not good at that position, let them try, let them fail, and say, hey, I think you might be better here.
Yep. Well, it's like,
they surprise you, right?
Total.
Sometimes they surprise you.
So my oldest is a junior. Last year with baseball, I'm very aware of like my kids' strengths and weaknesses. Like I know where they're good, I know where they're not. So like I'm never going to be that parent. I'm never going to complain to the coach, and I know the coach really well. But their JV baseball team was struggling with pitching, and I'm saying like kids who I mean, they're throwing it behind kids consistently. And I'm like, whew. And my kid's a solid
Right.
pitcher, and he'd never thrown a pitch for his school. Now, like some of them didn't love the pitching coach. There's other factors,
Right.
but I emailed the head coach and I said, hey, this is not a complaint. You will never hear a complaint from me, like unless things are really, really bad. But like we're not those parents, you know us. I was like, but I said, I know Gabe is super shy. He's never going to say anything. He can pitch. If you need pitching,
But
he
guess
can
what?
pitch. He's actually really steady.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I said, if you need, I said, I'm not saying you do need pitching, although you do. I'm not going to tell you how to do your
Right.
job. Like, but if you need some pitching, like, you know, you might throw him out there. And he was like, okay, I didn't know. He throws him out there the next game, 3 up, 3 down. I was like, yeah, he can do it. But I was making I was very careful because I know the emails that coaches get, because I hear the other parents talking to them.
Oh,
Like, I'm not going
gosh.
to tell you how to do your job. If you don't pitch him, great. I'm just saying, hey, if you need something, here's an option. If you don't need it, great. Who cares? But I just want you to have more information available.
Right.
I'm not going to be mad at you either way. And so I think there's a lot of factors. I think our school where our boys go, they do a good job. Every sport, they have a meeting with the AD at the beginning of the season for parent expectations and say, here's what you need to
God,
understand.
that's amazing.
And it's like, hey, and the coach is like, I'm never going to talk to you about playing time. We will not have that conversation. Yep. If you want to ask me how your kid can grow and develop, then we can have that conversation. I prefer your kid to have the conversation with me, which is great. Like the travel clubs my boys have played on, their coaches, they will say, like, I'm not going to talk to you. Your kid has to be, if they want it, they got to ask for it, which I love that. Now they're like, if your kid's 12, 13, okay, you know, they're in middle school, like there's some age expectations. And they'll say, hey, if you do have an issue, so we have a tool that we use with teams to eliminate gossip, and it's just called go to the source, right? When you have an issue if I have an issue with one of you, like the other one's not going to solve it. It's just me and you. Now I may go to the other one and say, hey, look, I have this issue. I'm not trying to gossip to you. I need your wisdom and expertise because you know him better. I may be wrong. So if you think I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. But I want us to have a productive conversation. How do you think I should approach this? Well, now I'm going to him not for gossip. I'm going to him for wisdom. And I'm saying, hey, just keep this between us. Like the team doesn't need to know about it. Like I'm coming to you for help, not coming to you to spread rumors. Right. And so like our school teaches that to the parents, like, hey, you will, if you have an issue, come to the coach. Don't talk to another parent. Don't gossip is not going to be part of the culture. We don't allow it from your kids on the team. We're not going to allow it from, so they set some expectations with parents. Now, parents still have to listen, which is a different
That's huge.
story.
That eliminates, but I'm just, that eliminates 50% of the problem right there, because I think communication is the biggest factor. And not to cut you off, Kevin, but like that communication of just, hey, yours, like, look, I'm sitting down your kids and giving them the expectations and the standards of this, but also you as the parent, especially middle school, high school, like there's an expectation for you as well, not only to do your job as a parent. And look, I'm not going to tell anybody how to parent or whatever. That's your world. But when it comes to this program, right, like this is some of the things that you're expected to do. Now, look, can't deal with that or you don't want to deal with that, like, look, that's a different conversation. And look, you need to have that with your child because, hey, maybe this isn't the right sport for them, or I'm not the coach, but like, you know, this is how we are going to do things.
This is how we're going to do it.
Ultimately,
it's
at the
my
end
program.
of it, my name's on it, right? And that's it.
This
is it.
And
correct.
And
I love that the athletic director factors that in too. Right, because that's big too, right? Because like now you're not talking, oh, well,
he's the boss.
This coach is out for my kid, or it's only the football team. No, this is my athletic department. This is the brand of athletics at this school that's going to, you know, this is what it's going to be. And that's the bottom line. So I think that in 100%. Itself eliminates at least some of the problem. Now,
and he tells them,
you get to the next level, like that's what it is. Those are the people that
totally. And to your point, not everyone's going to listen and abide by it, and that's life. But he tells him, he's like, look, I'm not going to come to your job and tell you how to do it. So don't tell our coaches how to do their job. They're going to make mistakes. They're not going to be perfect. They love your kids. They want the best for your kids, but they're also imperfect. So if there are questions, let's have adult conversations. And he also tells them, not within 24 hours of a game. He's like, do not come. He like, 100%. We lost a playoff game one time. And he goes, and before I get on the bus, a parent's like, well, you should. He's like, okay, now is not the time
Oh,
to
of
be
course.
having that conversation. But I think too with
Look,
kids,
I got it
and
this year, Kevin. Look, I got it this year coming off the field post game after a 36-0 win, right? Like that, you
Yeah.
know, and athletic. And look, it's the athletic director walking next to me. So it's not
Yeah.
like that created any sense of like, hey, I'm not going to do this because the AD's here right now. I mean, we're talking like minutes after a game ended of a win, right? So
Yeah.
that culture in itself needs to be set. The standard needs to be set for
Yes.
what it is. And just,
Yes.
I think just setting that openly in person, right? Not through an email,
Yes.
not one of these
Yes.
mass, text messages that everybody gets for what time practice is. Like, no, this is the first meeting of the year, and this is what we're
Yes.
talking about. Here it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's
Yeah,
just so
they do
pivotal.
it. They do it fall, winter, and spring sports. They have a meeting for each one. And it says, he's like, hey, here are what you can expect from us as coaches, as leaders. Here's what you can expect from us, and it's consistent communication, all these different things. And here's what we expect from you. So to your point, like that's why communication is such a key thing for leaders, to over communicate and don't assume anything, over
Huge.
communicate. And so to your point,
Over
it's the same thing for kids. I think telling kids day one, hey, we're going to have a culture of accountability. I'm not here to be your friend. I am here to be your coach. I want you to like me. I want you to trust me, but I'm going to have to tell you some hard things sometimes. And it's not just about the sport. You're going to have to learn this in life. Like I always tell people, my kids, if they learn nothing else in our home, by the time they leave, they need to learn resilience, because the world's going to kick you in the face over and over and over and over again. And you got to learn that at 15, 16, 17, 18, not 30, when you have everything to lose, your family, your career. Like, you got to learn that at a young age. You got to learn how to be coached and how to be held accountable. And so we told all of our kids, hey, we're always going to take your coach aside unless they are demeaning or degrading you. If there's a
Which
reason,
is also,
and they
I
have
think,
coaches,
something that nowadays it's so different, right? That's, you used to get in the car and every parent was, hey, your coach did this, or that's why, like, you listen to your coach. And I think that's flipped a lot now, when now you get in that car
100%.
and the first thing that they're talking about is, oh, your coach made the wrong call here, or he should have played this, or you should have. That's so different. It's in the world of teaching as well, with education.
100%.
What that teacher says goes. Like, you see a lot of parents now siding the other way, and that's really hard for a kid. They don't know which way to go. Ultimately, of course, they're going to side with a parent. In terms of that, because that's their provider. That's their
communication.
that's just where it is.
Yep.
I think where you brought up is really good, in that a lot of coaches do fail in the communication aspect of it. So a couple things that I think are important with coaches, and in business, it's way more of an issue, by the way. 10 times more of an issue, because you task orient most people in your business. You very rarely strategically orient anybody. And when people are doing tasks, they could get just kind of lost in the tasks and completely get stuck in a rut and never get better, or get disgruntled because they feel like they're stuck in a rut. And it's much more task oriented, where sports, even when guys have task roles, they're a little more strategic oriented in what you're trying to do overall for the team.
Mm-hmm.
Even assistant coaches are thinking about, hey, we want to get this kid better for next year, or blah, 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 whatever that is. But I think that communication aspect is important. One of the things I learned, I think over communication, a good amount of communication is good. Silence is also good. Because it sends a message. Direct messaging and things designed to stir a response to see who's on board can sometimes be good. It's risky, but sometimes can be good. And I think that overall, if you have a long-term vision, you have to start to figure out, like, who's on the ship, who are the rats on the ship, like, who, and you have to kind of start to figure that part out. I happen to have had a few really, like, big life examples on it in my own business and as a coach, but I had one as a coach where I literally took a program over that was probably one of the worst in New Jersey. and we ended up going to the state championship 5 years later. But we had a lot of odds against us. One of the guys that hired me didn't want me to be the head coach. There was a lot of stuff against us to begin with. But one of the things was there was a continuous movement of coaches over the years. And what ended up happening is there was, by the time I got to the state championship, there were I think it was two guys that were left from the original staff. Those two guys were hands down the most trustworthy, stable human beings that you could have, as far as, not that they didn't listen. I got knocked down, drag out battles with them in the early years, but they were the first guys to come over the next day, give you a hug, you know what I mean, and be like, hey man, I'm on board. Like, and guys that were part of it in those same instances maybe gotten knocked down, drag out battles and didn't say anything. And then I would see certain things and I'm like, this guy's not going to be here next year. And sometimes it was coordinators, you know what I'm saying? So it was very, very interesting. And the two guys actually who made it all the way through happened to be guys. One was the strength and conditioning coach who helped with the O-line, D-line, but wasn't really a coach. He was the strength and conditioning coach. And me and him had huge disagreements. He was so old school. I mean, he's literally, we're talking about Lombardi all the time. You know what I mean? That's how old school he was, And, he's at least 30 years older than me, at least 25 years older than me. And but he was a great human being, right? And that went so long. So even when we disagreed and I had more modern tactics, he had some old school tactics, we figured out what worked. Where can we meet? I need to do this. Okay, great. You know what? And I realized some of those things were actually great. He was right on some of these things, believe it or not. Like, there were things he was right on. And then there were things that, like, from like a speed standpoint, he was like, you know what, you're right on these things, right? So it actually worked out really well. The other guy was an O-line coach, okay, who had zero responsibility. He was literally like the bus coordinator. He had played O-line in high school. It was a wrestler. And he was the lowest man on the totem pole. I really didn't even think he was going to take the job. And I didn't think he was going to pan out. I never thought he would pan out because he didn't know anything about football. Very little. He ended up being a phenomenal offensive line and defensive line coach. And he really didn't even want to coach offensive line because he was really more of a defensive line guy. And he became even better as an offensive line coach. And now he still coaches to this day, at another school. And every school he's been at since, they've been a powerhouse. He's been an assistant. He's always been an assistant. But he's been a huge part of those programs. And I thought it was so interesting. So what I learned from that is that loyalty is very important, but it wasn't loyalty. They weren't loyal to me. Like, they weren't my guys. There were guys that I brought in that were my guys that did not make it. They could not handle the losing in the beginning. A couple of them couldn't handle the losing. A couple of them couldn't handle me. Period. Like, they couldn't handle me. Those two guys never took anything personally to heart, meaning even they have everyone's personal feelings, but they were able to move on to it for the greater good. And I can tell you that we ended up becoming phenomenal friends. They would not have been guys I would ever hang out with, never in 100 million years. And they became great friends to this day. I'm friends with, and it's interesting because as leaders, you have to, I feel like you have to continue to learn from your staff, but also to weed out your staff. And that is hard for a lot of leaders. And by the way, so on the player side, sometimes you don't weed out players, in my opinion, but you sometimes have to let players go if they're not happy. Meaning, you have to say, hey, it's okay if you don't want to be here. It's okay if you want to transfer. It's okay. I'm not upset with you. I realize it's not, you don't dislike me per se, but you dislike the program. That's okay. But I think you have to do that, and you have to continue to do that. Now, I've read Jack Welch's book. I don't know if you've read Jack Welch's book from back in the day, right?
Yep.
He was big on getting rid of, I can't remember if it was the bottom 20% or bottom 10%, whatever it was. Maybe it's bottom 10%. And every single year. I don't know that I subscribe to a percentage, but I subscribe to figuring out who really is not there to be a part of what you're doing and figuring that out and handling that, knowing that you might lose players because you do it. You might lose a superstar because he's loyal to an assistant. You have to be willing to part ways with that, because at the end of the day, you got to go to sleep at night, and there's no point in going to bed worrying about this guy stabbing you in the back and this guy doing this and this player doing that. You're better off getting out.
And by you worrying about that individual, right? Like, you're taking away from all the others, correct? Like, you know what I mean? Because you're so hyper focused on this one, what you think is a pivotal piece to it, when really, like, look, sometimes addition by subtraction, like, now my focus can go to the majority of the guys that aren't acting this way or doing this or doing this, right? And that's where I think being a head coach, especially football, where the numbers are just your roster size is just bigger, you're just dealing with more of it. I think that's where you really have to start to understand, like, hey man, sometimes we just got to cut ties and go, which is why I am in favor of the transfer portal in that, retrospect.
Yep. I mean, it's there's no lukewarm, right? Either you're all in or you're all out. And if you're out, be all out. It's okay. Just be honest with everyone. Be honest with yourself. And I think part of it too is realizing if someone is not an A player, but they're not bad for the culture, are we okay? Are we okay with them being a C player but an A culture guy? Like, okay, they're not going to perform to a certain potential, but they're not going to hurt us because the way they show up makes us better. Great. I mean, I have a women's basketball coach, Power 4, who got rid of I think it was their top player last year because she was a culture cancer. And the coach lost so much sleep over that because you fear, because we believe this lie that one player makes the team. No, one player will break the team, especially on a smaller team. And she's like, our whole environment is so much different. Like, and getting rid of a toxic talent will elevate the performance of everybody else, because that person wasn't actually making anybody else better. And if you're not willing to have those conversations, then you actually don't have a standard. Your standard is what you allow. And if you allow a different standard for a high performer to be lazy, to be entitled, to be a bad teammate, well, then you don't actually get to hold anybody else to a higher standard, because that person, no. You're allowing that. So you actually can't hold me accountable to anything. If that person's not held accountable, then I'm going to do whatever I want to do. You've now set a new standard, but to have the guts and the courage to say, okay, this is one of our best players. I'm willing to risk losing them if they don't want to buy in. If they're going to reject my accountability, if they're going to reject our vision and say hey, this program's not for me, then okay, because they're just a player. I can find another player. This season may go how this season goes, but long term, and if that ends up getting me fired, I'm going to put my head on my pillow at night with peace, saying, yeah, I did the right thing, not the easy, convenient thing. I didn't chase wins for the sake of my own soul or integrity. I preached standard and coached the standard and actually held that standard. And if that's what gets me out, then so be it. But I think so many coaches, this industry, it's a fear-based industry. Everyone's coaching afraid of losing their job, afraid of what donors are going to say, afraid of what parents are going to say. Well, fear is a pretty bad boss,
I think that's a really great point. I think what's the willingness to, when you have the willingness to just hold the standard, it's amazing when a guy who you think you spent all this time on decides to leave you. Okay. You're always surprised. Coaches are always surprised, but they don't realize that there's another guy that's been waiting in the wings that might be a B. If your other guy was an A athletically and this guy's a B athletically, but he's been waiting on the wing to get his opportunity, and then gets the opportunity, and that guy's all in. And maybe he doesn't have the A athleticism. Maybe he has the B athleticism, but he becomes an A+ character, an A- player, and overall you can trust him more. And I think down the line that player will make a minimum as many plays, and you have less of a headache. Maximum more plays, and the other players on the team will enjoy the team a lot more because they're not looking and saying
Absolutely.
exactly what you say. Oh, we gotta wait for this guy. This guy doesn't give the effort, but yet he wants the most amount of balls. And I
Yep.
think that part becomes really, really a difference maker down the line. Now, I get it how a lot, especially at the highest level, a lot of those guys don't get that chance to then, they coach it, college coaching or pro. You might get fired before you actually get a chance to even
Right.
infuse that culture in the right direction. Yep. But you have to be willing to take that risk because, again, you can sleep at night knowing that you made a move that will help you sleep a lot better. And the truth is, I always think that there's a good chance that player will be happier somewhere else. And if he isn't happier at the next place, it's obviously on that person. So,
well, Kelvin Sampson always had a phrase, said, same player, different zip code.
Right.
He goes, if that kid's a problem in Houston, he's going to be a problem at Oklahoma, or he's going to be a problem at Now, sometimes, to your point, that kid just does need a different environment, and sometimes that's a real, that's a very real thing. And that kid in a different environment is going to grow and thrive. And a lot of times, it's not necessarily the environment; it's the kid changing and becoming more mature and having some humility. Like the kid's changing, the environment wasn't the issue, and that happens. But so many times, they're chasing, they're transferring, they're leaving, they're whatever out of their own selfish gain. And can I get more money? Can I get more playing time? I always tell young people, when you get out of college, it doesn't matter what the job is. Work for someone who will develop you. Because you can take skills to pretty much it, unless you're going to be a doctor or an attorney or whatever it may be, something specialized. But for the most part, you can learn any skill. If it's marketing, if it's sales, if it's coaching, whatever. Work for someone who will develop you, who will help you grow, and then you can figure out what you want to do with your life. You don't need to have it all figured out at 24, because most of us don't have it figured out at 40. But go work for someone who will invest in you and who will develop you, and you will have such an advantage in life. Stop chasing all the shiny things, because it ultimately leads down to a path of unhappiness, of dissatisfaction. You're going to be 40, like, what in the world have I been doing? I've been chasing somebody else's version of success. I never actually did the things that I should have been doing. And it's the same with these kids. Now it's tough. It's hard to tell an 18-year-old at Oklahoma, like, hey, don't go to Texas where they're going to pay you $1.5 million and Oklahoma paid you $5 million. That's a bad decision. Well, it's like, not all money is good money. Chase, will they develop you? Will they invest in you? Can they prepare you for the next level or whatever it is? There's so many other factors. We just get distracted. And I think coaches have to be the same way of saying, okay, what are we actually coaching for? Yes, obviously we care about wins and losses. But if one player is going to make or break our program, then we've done something wrong.
I think it's a great point. I think developing is a big aspect, and then the other thing is opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. So you need to be developed. That's a good part of it. That's the mentorship part of it. That's one part of it, and the other part of it is someone who's willing to just say, "Hey, listen, I know you may not think you're ready, but you just got to go." And
go figure this out.
You got to go figure this out. So those two things, I mean, that's the world, I guess. But
it's like,
right.
Hey, and you're going to fall on your face,
right?
And that's okay, because I expect you to.
That's where you're going to learn the most.
That's right. It doesn't mean that I think you're a failure or not good enough. I know I'm throwing you into something that you've not done before, so I know there's going to be struggles and setbacks. I get it, but this is also the best place for you to fail. You're not going to fail in a way that actually costs us anything other than your own ego. So if you're good with losing that, then great. Go run, jump, try to figure this thing out. When you fall on your face, let's have some conversation, and I'll coach you up, and then you'll go try again. And eventually you figure it out. I think that's a huge point, to give people opportunity. Because I think this generation, I know we always try to overgeneralize generations, but this generation is terrified of failure. Yes. Terrified of it.
Oh boy, yes.
And to put them in positions where, like, they can fail in a safe environment, like, hey, you actually have nothing to lose here. Your job's safe, as long as it's not an ethical thing. Your job's safe. Like when I was in the corporate world, I was in healthcare recruiting, And I was very successful in what I was doing. And our president was like, hey, I think we're going to try to branch off into this market. He's like, you want to try that? I'm like, let's go. I have no idea. And it failed miserably. And actually, like nothing, there was no actual need there. But he was like, you're safe. Like, we don't know if this market works or not. Like, there's no pressure on you to figure it out. Let's go see what's possible. If not, we have plenty of opportunities here. Like, you're not going to be gone. This isn't figure this out, or there's nowhere for you at this company. It's like, hey, this could be a potential for us. Go figure it out. Well, a year and a half in, like, yeah, this is not going to work at all. I've talked to everyone I can talk to. We've figured out every angle, and it's just not great. Well, let's slide you back over into this role, and we'll figure out. But he trusted me to go try new things, and if they worked, awesome. If they didn't, awesome. But we didn't know if we didn't try, and it just took the fear of failure. I'm like, great, I fail all the time. Welcome to life,
I think a great example happened
Right.
last night in the basketball game that I was watching my son's team play. And my son shoots three. He'll go in traffic. He'll drive. We ran a play, and he got a pass. Nobody's ever been more open for a layup of all time. He's a very good basketball player. He was so open. It was the easiest layup he ever had in his life, and had so much time to think about it. Actually, as it goes
Oh,
on,
yep.
he actually like shorthanded and missed it, and he was so upset because it was a thing of beauty. You know what I mean? The coach put the play together. It was a thing of beauty. I was like, that really was a thing of beauty, and he missed it, and he was so mad at himself. And I said after, instead of being mad at yourself, I said, you get the ball and you're that open, you attack it the same way that you attack it when a defender's in your way. You go at the same exact speed and you just lay it up. And you listen, you might miss it. I don't know. But you go at that same exact speed. You don't change it because you're all of a sudden got this fear of failure because you know it's the easiest layup you ever had in your life, right? So all of a sudden the fear of failure creeped in because he had this time to think about it as he was going up for the layup. And that's, to me, defines how a lot of kids are in today's world. Like they're scared. Oh my God, this is the easiest layup. Like, what do I do? Like, no, you just go as hard as you normally do and you lay the ball in, and whatever happens, happens, right? And I think that's important. And when I saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, like it was a glaring example. And I've seen other kids, but it happened to be my son in this instance, do the same thing. And I realized they had the time to think about actually failing when they're normally on a fast break and they're playing against someone and they drive and they have to go over somebody. They just make the layup or they don't think about it. But in this instance, they do. And that is one of the things that with the younger generation that they have a hard time with because everything is so cultivated for them. Meaning, here's where you go to train. Here's where you go to learn. You go to Kumon for extra learning. You go to this for that. And they're left out of the decision-making process a lot. And then when they all of a sudden have to make a decision, they actually fear failure because they haven't been making as many decisions. And I think that's a huge part of Gen Z. Massive. Gen Z. I don't know what you call the next generation after that, but huge part of Gen Z. And I think it's only going to become more as things become even less decision-making gets put into their path with AI. Like I could look at AI and still make my own decisions on it, even though it's incredibly tempting to not make a decision. I think younger kids, why should they even look at it and make a decision?
Right.
They look at it like there's the answer. That's the answer. Why should I even read it and think about if it's right or wrong? It's AI. That is the answer. And so that takes we're sending them to a trainer. This is taking it to a level that is far beyond even the Gen Z level who struggles with decision-making and their own. So I don't know, like, what can be done to start to infuse it. Because I just saw a couple of guys talk about this the other day. I saw Glenn Beck talk about it. I saw a couple other guys talk about it. Like, what are we as human beings going to be? Like, what are we going to define? What is a human being? What actually is a human being? We have to figure out what we want to be as human beings, because a lot of things are going to end up being done for us, especially, I mean, I'll probably be long gone 35 years from now, 40 years from now, but 40 years from now, I mean, I can't even
Be
imagine.
wild.
Derek
Well, I mean,
was alive and well.
we talked to our
At
parents.
this point,
It was 20 years ago. Like, we didn't have maps on our phones. To be able to, if I would have told my parents 20 years ago, like, hey, in 20 years to get to our kids' game, or last night my eighth grader had a basketball game, and our school streams it on YouTube. And my parents are like at home with YouTube on their TV watching my eighth grade son play basketball 2 hours away. They're like, this is wild, and we can, it's a very different world, and it's a world of convenience, but we have to still teach people, like, I always tell my kids, hey, could you do this? No, you're not helpless. Like, you can figure it out. And we have a rule in our house: if you can do it yourself, I'm not going to help you. Now, I might, just out of the kindness of my heart, like every now and then, but for the most part, no, you're not helpless. Figure it out. Be a problem solver. And by the way, I've got to run just a minute. I've got a call.
I found it to be very, very. It has to be taught over and over and over again with kids, and young kids you're coaching. I'm sure it has to be taught over and over again with even high school kids. But it's. I had this conversation with my son. I said, I learned to tie my shoelaces at 5 years old. That was a requirement in kindergarten. It irritated me so much that the school does not bother teaching. I was like, what do you mean they don't teach you to tie your shoelaces when they were in kindergarten? Because every kid came in there with Velcro. You know what I mean? Up until they're like in third grade. Well, they're all figuring out how to tie their shoelaces at 8. Derek, you're not there yet. You will be. Wait till this. Like, I was shocked that they didn't learn to tie their shoelaces in kindergarten.
Oh, yeah.
So
we live in a world of convenience, but like getting better is never convenient. Figuring out how to unlock your potential or be something in the world is not convenient. But my thing is and I've got to go in just a couple minutes. I've got a call.
Yeah, well, let's go.
But the American dream, I think, is actually the pursuit of comfort. Right? So how can I get the nice house and the nice neighborhood and the nice and remove all hardship from my life? And then wonder why, like, I get a nail in my tire. I'm like, oh my gosh, why is everything falling apart? Why is life so hard? Like, this is why cold plunges exist, because our lives are too easy that we have to go sit in a cold plunge, like, to feel something.
We need,
it's like, oh, adversity.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna have to quote that one. That's my cold plunges. That's
great. That's awesome.
This is my adversity.
Yeah, that's funny. That's crazy.
You got out of a cold plunge, sat in an infrared sauna, put on your essential oils, and went and sat at a desk all day, like, which is fun. Like, jobs are job. Like, we have to have some type of hardship. Like, we're made for overcoming hardship, and so we have to be doing hard things consistently, not avoiding every hardship in our life.
I'll let you go on this. The American dream. I was just in the discussion yesterday. I do this conservative political show. But it's not about what the stance is. We had this discussion that I said, the American dream, people think that it's what you said. It's about convenience. It really was like, hey, I have a job. I got my little tiny plot house. Like these, like, what do you think the houses were in 1800?
Right.
Like, they were like little cabins. And it wasn't like their life was going to be easy. It was like, I got a chance to do something and have my little piece of the whole pie, right? Somehow it's become what you just said, which you nailed it right on. Like, the American dream is convenience. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it's not.
We want everything to be easy. Yeah.
Right.
It's like,
great.
But again, like being a great leader or winning a championship or figuring out what's possible in our careers, like, none of that is convenient or easy. But this is why everyone think, if I just take this, then I'll be this. I'm like, no, like, there's no quick fix. Like, the work is the work, and you have to have patience and perspective. And if you can't just stay in it, I love a quote I heard recently. I don't know who said it, but it's like, the man who loves walking will walk further than the one who loves the destination. It's like, you got to be about the process. Like, goals are great, but they're not fulfilling. It feels good for a second. If you've won a state title, you're like, that's awesome today. But now I have to start over because like that wasn't actually fulfilling. It was awesome. It wasn't a bad goal. It's not that I shouldn't have wanted that thing, but I have to put goals in proper perspective and just take the next step on the journey and the next step on the journey and the next step on the journey.
People don't realize that championships are a strange feeling when you've won them. You win a championship, and as you're walking off the field, okay, now it's different when you're in a 50,000 seat stadium, but it's still the similar feeling. When you're in the room by yourself, you actually think to yourself for 1 second, you go, I guess that's it. That's what it is.
Yep.
You feel it. You feel what it's like. It is euphoria. And then it's over. You're a regular person.
And then it's what am I going to eat for dinner?
Right. That's it. People don't realize it that what it is. No matter what championship, small, big, or
100%.
whatever, different.
Yep.
It's the similar.
And same with a promotion or getting a job or whatever, like landing your first client. Like it's all the same. Like they're not bad things, but they're not fulfilling. Like it's part of the process. Billy Donovan wins 2 back-to-back, and he's like, I'm depressed.
Right.
He's like, is this it? I'm 35. I'm at the peak of my profession. I've done it twice. Is this all there is?
Yeah.
Because again, like,
right.
And it's because you've wrapped your identity up in an outcome, not
Correct.
your identity up in who am I becoming along the way and how do I stay engaged in this process. Yep, that was one step in the process, but that's not the ultimate outcome. It was just an outcome. I still have a long ways to go to figure out what's possible for me, for my career, for my potential.
No doubt. Listen, Kevin, it's been
Kevin,
great
thank you
having
enough, man. I mean, I can't thank you enough. Yeah, absolutely.
Loved it.
Really,
Loved
really fulfilling. So thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
What's your Twitter again, Kevin? So people can go and follow you. I know you got a big following there. That's probably the best place, right?
Yep, probably the best place, just at Kevin Deshazo. So just my name, easiest place, and that's got all links to websites and books and email and all that kind of stuff for people who want to check it out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
All right. Bye.
Thanks, Kevin. Good luck. Thank you.
That was great. Great job.
Good
Great
stuff.
guest. I didn't know anything about him until I looked it up, and I didn't even know at that point even really what it was going to be about. But he was phenomenal.
Yeah, a lot of different those guys that kind of can cross. You know what I mean? They can, sports or business and all those kind of stuff when it comes to the leadership aspect. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I just think those guys that do or are in kind of multiple. I mean, it's all leadership, but different. They've hit on different age levels or size of whether it be sports or businesses. Like, I think their perspective is unique to itself, and I think it can benefit everybody when we talk to. Look, leadership is leadership, whether it's sports, whether it's business, you know what I mean? Like it's across the board.
There's no doubt you're home. There's plenty of different things and that you have to deal with. And it's very, very interesting stuff. Like it doesn't matter whether you command 2 people, a person, you work with a person, there's leadership involved in a lot of aspects of what you do.
Absolutely.
And it's funny the discussion on the American. We were just talking. We went on a tangent on the conservative show last night, and it was started out with politics, but it went into this like thing about the American dream and like how like somehow it's got conflated that you had to have everything in this American dream. Like there are people
right.
that get to have everything. Very few. It's no different than becoming a pro athlete. Very few people make it to that. Very few people get every part of the quote unquote American dream. But it was really intended so they had freedom, like to have the opportunity to have a piece of America, whether it's whether it's a house, whether it's a small house. But I mean, like, the people who won freedom in the 1700s, I mean, like when you look at the houses from them, they're pretty tiny. So You know,
and those people, like, they just wanted that little piece. You know what I'm saying? And that was everything to them, right? Like, and now it's, oh, well, that's not good enough. Or it's, look, and it's also, again, back to like social media and the awareness and seeing at so many things and the comparison type thing. Like, everybody's always comparing. Like, man, I mean, we just talked about it with, you know, the coaching world. Like, some guys don't want to be head coaches. Some guys don't want to go bigger or better than, you know, than high school. You know what I mean? Like, it's about self-awareness and self-fulfillment, not fulfilling what it is for everybody else. That's, you know, what it really comes down to.
Absolutely. And it's very like AI is, I saw a couple things on this. I didn't think about it this way until I saw, like, Glenn Beck happened to have a podcast where he addressed this, and a couple other people did. And it's like, there's going to be a point where you're going to be having a lot of things done for you, like a very near term time period. Like, think of how fast AI has progressed just in the last year or two. And you're going to have things happening that are like, you're like, what? Like, there will be a very short time period, Derek. It's almost there already. Where you'll pull up your film and football, and that whole shit will be broken down for you, told you exactly what the team's going to do percentage wise, every tendency they have. You can map out a perfect quote unquote game plan based off
It's
of
gonna do all of it for you.
based off of their history, right? And you know what the great coaches may end up being down the line? The guys who can actually change certain things from week to week at the same time that they have their staples. Those people are probably going to become the best coaches, because eventually they're going to get perfect information. You know, right now, even though it's still human beings analyzing it, right? If me and you were on the same defensive staff and we were responsible for building a game plan and we did a really good job, but we happened to miss something, well, a team could exploit us if we happen to miss something, right? Well, eventually we're going to get all that information, but we're not going to know what the coach can come up with for the week upcoming. You know what I mean? So, that's where like, I think guys like Lane Kiffin have thrived, because in college he has all these like little wrinkles every single week. You know what I mean? Like, every single week he's wrinkles that he does off of his main offense that you're like, oh man, you know what I mean? And it hits, and it's a changer. And in these close games, it obviously makes a difference. One touchdown. So,
I agree.
But it is so interesting. Like, eventually you're going to walk in, the head coach is going to be like, you know, Johnny AI spit out our game plan for us.
Right.
He spit it out for us in 15 seconds. Here it is.
I know.
All right. Now, what
the
do we
work?
want?
The work is the work is no longer going to be a part of it. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, listen, it's already changed for high school with huddle, right?
Yep.
I mean, we used to come in for hours on a Sunday, hours on a Monday.
To break it down, and the guys that put more work into it, like, got better. Now everybody could just click a button and go.
Right. So if you're in there for hours, like, we could break down huddle at home, do a great job. Now, some guys like you to be there, but like, you end up discussing something sometimes that you already know the information on. So you should be moving on to the next thing because you already know that information. I think coaches probably are trying to figure out at the high school level. College, they probably already do this, but at the high school level, like, hey, if we're going to meet, it's not going to be like, we shouldn't be wasting our time of the tendencies on the film, because we should already have that from
we do, but just by clicking a button. Yep. Just by clicking a button, you have that, you know.
Now let's talk about, okay, we know what they're doing. We know what we do. Let's talk about how we could defeat them. Is it better technique? Is it a particular play that we could exploit? Let's use our time in meetings on that versus us all right, this is what their tendencies is. Like you could take your huddle spreadsheet right now, Derek. I don't know if you guys tag everything, but if you guys tagged everything and you put it into
Yeah, we do.
Claude,
Yeah, it comes all back. Yep, we get. Oh, yeah. What is that? An AI site?
if you put it into Claude, Derek, you'll get a report of exactly what they're doing. Exactly.
Yeah, but don't we already get that in Huddle? No, like we don't need to plug it into something. Huddle spits that back and gives me all the percentages and all their stuff.
It's not just percentages; it's an actual breakdown of what the actual
I'm
team
confused.
does. It's a report. It's literally.
Isn't that what the percentages do? Like they say they're in this personnel for this amount of time. They run this play this many times out of this. Like
it gives you a narrative of what you could do within the game. So what
I'm
you
confused.
can attack. What's that?
Oh, like it gives you run this play again. They do this, like shit like that.
Yes, this could be successful against this. These type of blitzes could be successful against it.
Oh,
These type of offensive plays, they go. If they run this set, they're 100% on this. The AI will then tell you, here's a couple of blitzes or a couple of sets defensively that could stop this effectively. So you could take that information. You might have that already in, but you could actually now focus on, oh, okay, an A/B blitz would be the best blitz.
And that and then now it'll come down to like, do people trust that AI? Like, is like, okay, they're just like when you used to go and get information from a certain website, and it was like, how reliable is that website? Are we going to 100% trust everything AI says that it's 100% true? That's I think where coaches will come to question.
Well, the question will be eventually is, do you have a higher level of understanding of football than AI? So eventually AI will have all the inputs of every offense, every defense, every blitz of all time in there, which there's no way any of us could know that.
Yeah.
Eventually that'll all be in there. And then you plug in all your huddle sheet, and it's going to say to you, hey, your percentages like you might get from huddle, but now you're going to get a report of how to attack it. And you could do that now, by the way. I've done it already, and it was 100% right. I can't get everybody to listen to what I'm telling them from that standpoint yet, because they're like, huh? I'm like, yeah, like this is right. But yeah. I'm saying eventually you will. Eventually people will, So, and I don't think within short order. I'm like 2 to 3 years, Derek. 2 to 3 years max.
Oh, I mean, it's moving fast.
Like it'll be. There's already systems being built. Like I get emails on it, but there's already systems being built. But 2 to 3 years max, you will have that information. And then that's what I said. The best coaches will take all that. They'll be able to take the exact plan that's given to them and then construct an elite strategy that makes it different. You know what I'm saying? That makes what they're doing better. Yeah. So, but some of it might be like what would be really, really elite is not only is it doing that, but can it watch your players move, right? And identify technique issues along the way. Like, think about that.
Yeah, that'll be crazy.
Like,
well, so then it's like you're asking it to watch film.
What's that?
Yep. I said, yeah, then it'll be like, you know what I mean? Then then it'll come to it like, do you even need assistant coaches?
Well, you will, because you're going to need the coach. So what we are essentially, we're the hands.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, Derek, you don't have maybe one day a robot will be there coaching, but for a long time, it's going to be, you're going to get all this information and you're going to know the players and the techniques you're going to have to focus on. And you'll be able to really help your player because you're going to be looking at that particular thing with them and you'll realize it. Whereas you probably do it, but you're probably glancing over it for the most part.
Of course.
Because you're addressing the unit as a whole versus this specific guy is making this mistake. And, but I think AI will do that. That's why it is important for people to figure out, like, what is their skill set? What do they want their skill sets to be? Like, what do they want? Like, what do they want their life to be? You know what I mean? Because there's some guys that love the fact that they're the brilliant one, right? Like,
absolutely.
I'm sure there are guys that watch the film and love the fact that they're the one that can figure out what nobody else can figure out. So when that's taken
right, and now they're not going to have that opportunity. Yeah,
that's going to be taken away. You know what I'm saying? So if that's taken away, I think what won't go away, like because coaches are already getting this information, like percentages, like they already have analytics, right? Run this play, don't run this play, run this. Their job is going to be how good are they able to take the analytics and make a decision from that will help the team as like a field general. Like you're really a field general, right? Like when America goes to war right now, I'm sure America knows all the scenarios that can happen, right? They probably already have all that in military. We don't have that as coaches, but in the military you have it, right? You don't drop a bomb without knowing everything about every single place that you're doing it in, almost. But the guy, what you don't know? Well, you have those eyes, but here's the issue. The issue is when you go between buildings, right? So your technique matters when you go between buildings and you're in hand-to-hand combat. That still matters. Like that's still an issue.
Oh, yeah.
That issue is not going to change.
Boots on the ground, buddy.
The boots on the ground is not going to change.
100%.
The tactics overhead, like I'm sure they could say, hey, we're going to attack here, here, and here, literally from up high, and it communicates down, and then how well they can execute that is still going to be an issue. Or call an audible, right? How well are you going to, all of a sudden you get bombarded, and how do you audible, in that situation? So I don't know. It's interesting because I'm sure in the military they have so much information. Like, can you imagine the information?
Oh my God, probably too much.
Can you imagine? They must have decision systems too that say this scenario.
I think you have to, otherwise you just wouldn't be able to just. I mean, how do you get through all of that? Or if you're taking that many things into account, like, like how are you really like? Okay, I'm 100%. Like this is what we're. You know what I mean? Like it's just. It all becomes a numbers game. Look, we see that argument already with guys that base some of the decisions off analytic. Well, the numbers said do this, but my gut instinct said do that, right? Like it's our battle with that back and forth. So it'll just be some. Obviously, I like a lot of information, and then I'll make the choice off of it. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes that can just only add to the confusion when you're like, oh my gosh, things have to get to this decision. Like. I wish there was less so I could just make it and, go like, but who knows, man? I mean, it's a whole different beast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that always becomes in football, the issue with like where guys basically take points off the board. They don't take the damn field goal. I don't understand that. Like early in the game, like why wouldn't you take the field goal? Like just take the field goal. It's not, you don't even know what's going to happen in the game.
Take points.
You're never going to score. You may never score again. So, like, they may not score either, right? So you win 3-0. But guys
take the points.
They won't. They will just go off the analytics and go for it, and then all of a sudden it comes back to haunt them. Like that's why you do have to look at it, even though you're getting close. You're not getting perfect information. You're getting close to perfect information. That's the scare.
Oh, yeah.
That's the danger in sports, right? You're not getting perfect information. You're getting close.
You're never going to get that.
Right. So that's the whole. So even if you got it to 98%, there's still 2%, right? So there's still a percentage that things could go a different way. And there's still an element of chance because it's human beings playing the sport. So that's never going to change. Like it's, how many times does a punt get blocked? Does a snap get mishandled? Like, by the way, that's why sports, I think in the AI world, sports and anything that has some level of chance to it is only going to become more and more and more popular over time because we're going to have less
Right.
things that have chance. You know what I mean? There's going to be way less things that have chance. So football, basketball, golf,
Baseball's
hockey,
already in it.
baseball, all these really high chance related sports where there's a lot of variables that go into place, they're only going to, I think, will become popular. I think it's helped. I think analytics has helped baseball because people are
Baseball was dying.
Yes. So there's still, because there is so much chance still involved in it, because there's so much analytics, you're like, wow, there's still a tie game, in the 11th, and you bring in a pitcher and a guy hits a home run off of him, and the percentage just told you to bring him in because he struck out 90% of these guys, and the guy hits a home run. That's what makes sports so exciting because you'll see on analytics, he's 90% against left-handers in this situation, and then the guy blasts a home run off of him. It's great.
Yep.
There's nothing better than that.
That's why that's absolutely. That's why we do it.
That's the best part of sports. And that's why I think sports will only become more and more popular. And that also is why you have probably honestly, as AI becomes more and more of a thing, I think more kids are going to play sports because they're going to look at it as like an avenue to do. Yeah, challenge.
Or I'm gonna prove this wrong.
Well, I'm saying, where else are you going to be challenged in life? If you can get every answer to the test, where else are you going to be challenged other than physically? You're not, I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, I'll let you go. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.
We're back tomorrow. Who do we have tomorrow? Katie Leclerc. So she's like a big admissions aspect of recruiting, right? Like, from every level. So I'm really juiced to talk to her. She's done it for a long time at a lot of different levels. So I'm really excited to talk to her with the whole admissions process at every level, right? Like, she's been at it and helps recruits kind of deal with all of that kind of stuff. So be really good conversation.
That sounds good. I like the diversity of the things we're doing. So very good. And the reason why Twitter's low, like, I looked it all up. Like, usually our Twitter goes through the roof with
what is all this? Like, dude, I had trouble getting on this morning. Like, even my accounts, it was like loading and this and that. And I'm like, what the hell are we doing?
A lot of websites are on this whatever this gigantic company server system, Cloudflare. So Twitter's on it. I don't know if it's owned by Amazon or not. I think it might be Amazon, but Twitter's on it. Like, the group that I'm making a lot of my AI sites at, like, I'm using AI to help with these sites I'm making. They're on it. That's the only reason I knew at first, because I logged on this morning. I'm like, what's going on? Then I went on Twitter. I couldn't get on Twitter. Then I went on a bunch of sites that I normally go to. They're all on this. We're on this platform. Twitter is still slowly, it's obviously not perfect because it's not integrating it the way that it did before. Normally it's like 100 and something viewers right away with Twitter. So it's because of that. I'm sure not all the servers are up. You know what I mean? So anyway, it should be. I'm sure it'll be fixed. But, dude, that's how dangerous the whole thing is, because somebody can hack it,
and you're done.
You're done. We're back. We're back to the beginning. Better make fire. Better know how to make fire. You know how to make fire?
Gotta love it, buddy. Gotta love it.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy.
Have a good day. All right, bye.